Rabbit fighters, they're elegant bachelors, they're foxy to me. Are they foxy to you? Welcome to Rabbit Fighters, folks. We're a podcast whose raison d'etre, pardon my French, is that each week we look at a cultural touchstone that one or more of us has missed. And then, what do? We rectify it, we discuss it, and then maybe we grow a little bit. And that's the truth, Ruth. I'm Joshua.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Greg, and that's the double truth, Ruth.
What was the initial quote? I don't even get that.
The quote, that's from Pavement. Range life.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Malcolmus.
Oldie but a goodie. It's hard coming up with new intros every week.
I feel like
guys.
yeah, that's true. You do go to music, or sometimes you mix it up, but.
Well, folks, this week we are talking about an absolutely undisputed classic, Spike Lee's 1989 film, Do the Right Thing. Lauded by critics the world over and even inducted into the Library of Congress, but also famously overlooked by the Academy for the majority of the big prizes. This movie made it onto the list thanks to Greg, who demanded that Brian and I collectively get our heads out of our asses and finally get around to watching this film. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah. I would say not universally lauded or whatever the words you used there. There were plenty of people who hated this movie when it came out because, it's a black director who wrote and produced and acted and directed this movie. And, it's America.
I think the people who matter. They're really respected critics. Gave it a thumbs up.
A lot of the critics were like, it's an angry black man, and this movie is too harsh. I guess Ebert was one of the first major critics to be like, this movie is right on. And Ebert is married to a black woman, so probably had a little bit to do with his perspective, But yeah, I will say, not universally lauded, more retrospectively universally lauded. I think more people have now gone back and been like, oh yeah, we love this movie all along.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't immediately put in the Library of Congress. It was like the late 90s when they finally got around to it. So, and I think it made it onto the top 100 lists of all time. But again, many years after it actually came out.
I saw it in '89 when it came out, and it was and I was in high school in a tiny little town in Massachusetts, and in this lily white town. It just taught me so much stuff right away that I had no life experience of. It just brings you into the worlds of all these different people, like that I never would have encountered in this town, and I think it's early to say this in a podcast, but I think, as a thesis statement, that's kind of what movies do, right? Like, a lot of what's great about movies is they bring you into another experience that you haven't had yet, or you can't have, or you probably won't have, and in this case, it's just bringing you into the lives of these people. They're not taking you to Iceland or Antarctica where you're like, wow, I don't know if I'll ever travel there, but like, the lives of these people, it's a place that, as a white person and a person in a small town, you can't travel there. You literally can't. It's not Soul Man starring C. Thomas Howell, where he understands the black experience because he puts on blackface and sneaks his way into Harvard. It's literally.
God, I forgot about that movie.
It's the worst movie in history, and we're never going to do it on this show. never going to do Soul Man.
C. Thomas Howell, such a promising career.
Dude, James Earl Jones is in that movie, man. I'm like, did you have a building that you wanted to buy? Did you have a tax bill that was higher than you expected? Because James Earl Jones is a college professor, saying, you've learned a great deal, I can tell. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but this movie, that stuck with me. As soon as I saw this movie, I was like, man, this is incredible. So many lines stuck with me forever. So many characters stuck with me. The situations. And we'll talk about this later, but world events have played out, from this movie. This is pre-Rodney King. Where white America didn't understand that this
remains, unfortunately, very poignant and prophetic.
Is happening. Yeah. But I could go on forever, so I'm going to stop for now.
Well, before we dive too much into it, Greg, since this was your choice, and you did such a great job of like laying out the plot for Dune for us. Why don't you why don't you lay out the plot of a movie you actually understand?
Yeah.
and tell if there's anybody out there who has not actually seen Do the Right Thing, as you know, Brian and I hadn't until about a week ago. What's the plot of this movie?
Yeah.
What's it all about?
It doesn't have the weirding way. Josh is watching this going, when does the mayor use the weirding way and stop all this? The plot of this movie, and this is another thing that's interesting to me because like I'm also a writer. I've written plays and stuff like that. And someone makes a movie like this and it's all kind of character based and the story is almost secondary, to the characters. Like that's impressive to me too. So, but yeah, it's Brooklyn. It's 1989. It's Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is at that time, a black neighborhood, and it's got concentrated poverty. It's neglected by the overall city of New York. People are eking out livings however they can. Some people don't have a living, and they're all clustered together. And there's sort of a melange of like, Puerto Rican people, black people, like, there's a Korean family that opens a grocery. So it's a stew of people, and then this white guy who's just bought a brownstone. The gentrification is coming in. So like all these forces are convening on this little area of New York, and it's super hot, and really that's kind of the plot. There's a pizzeria that's the center of it, an Italian family that runs this pizzeria in a black neighborhood, and just the heat, the economic strife, the closeness of all these people that are on top of each other, the differences get magnified, and it just becomes this predictably combustible, mix of emotions and actions. So,
Which is the same plot in Predator 2, I think.
the same plot of Predator 2, but significantly fewer aliens with like weird octopus faces or whatever.
At least he didn't say vagina mouth again.
It had its time. Yeah, it's just a cross section of a pretty poor area at a specific point in time when everything is about to blow up.
I mean, I would definitely like. I wanted to like characterize it as being indicative of like what race relations were like in a specific time and place in the United States, but having seen it for the first time now, living in the year 2023, no, it's now. Like this is like race relations right now.
Terrifyingly
nothing
relevant.
has changed
Terrifyingly
since
relevant.
the 80s.
Yeah.
Which I think was probably one of the more shocking aspects of it to me, is to be able to reflect on the fact that this could have been made today. With very, very few changes.
Yeah. Except Bed-Stuy, you can't afford a brownstone for under $3 million.
Is it totally gentrified now?
Totally.
Yeah, I was gonna try and find the street and like Google Street View it in and see what it looks like now. And see
my brother lives
container
maybe,
store or something.
my brother lives maybe I don't know, 8 blocks away from this center of the story, and on the other side of it is the Barclays Center where the Brooklyn Nets play. It's giant stadium, like.
Oh wow.
So yeah, like the Larry Bird guy who just bought a brownstone, the only white guy in the neighborhood, and they're like, man, fuck gentrification. That was telling, like this. It was like the Oracle of Delphi wrote this movie. The Oracle of Bed-Stuy wrote this movie. Right? Like it's so, so accurate about so much that like had been happening, was about to happen, and it was going to happen in the distant future too. So,
well, Brian, how come you hadn't seen this movie? Just to put you on the spot.
I started it. I didn't get very far. I don't know why. I think some point I started watching. I got as far as them opening up the pizza parlor for the day and Mookie showing up, and and I don't know what happened. I just never back to it, but watching it for this, I'm actually mad at myself for not watching it last time. I don't know how, because this time I got sucked into it pretty quickly. Once you kind of get into it, I mean, even from the opening, like the whole movie is just kind of a vibe to it. And the whole time I'm thinking like it very much feels like a play to me. And I think some of that is a lot of I'm sure it has to do more about money, but the very few set locations, whether you're in the parlor or like Mookie's apartment or this, that, and the other, like it's very few spots. You're on the street. It feels like it's a play. Like, okay, there's a few different perspectives and it's always the same. And a lot of, like, as Greg mentioned, character driven type plot, which I really enjoyed about it, and kind of the way they changed the colors and the buildings to sort of make it to feel like it's warmer, and it was very hot and that kind of stuff. So, this to me is like a filmmaker's film in a way. And I don't it's kind of, so the critics or whatever being like, oh my God, this might cite violence, blah, blah, blah. But I don't really see it that way at all. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of the day in the life of a lot of diverse, cultures and races. And you could say it's a black film, but I mean, to the point, he does a very good job of like showing kind of the, like, bugging out his, calling Sal, the racist for not having any, famous black people on the wall and the pictures of the pizzeria. However, then you cut to the three older guys on the street and they're upset with the Korean family. And then you got everyone's like,
Yep.
The Puerto Ricans are going at it with somebody else. So it's not just like this white on black thing. It's really just this racial melting pot of just like cultural diversity, and everybody kind of is looking. It's just this weird like dynamic that everything is. He does a good job, I thought, and I mean, obviously it's focused on from the black perspective, but I don't know if it got snubbed, but I mean, I know it was nominated for things, but I think
it was like best original screenplay and then best supporting actor.
Didn't
it was like,
win, but
yeah,
it's a
for Sal, for the guy.
Yeah, Danny Aiello, the white guy, got a nomination.
Yeah,
the only time in his career that he got one. And what Brian was talking about is like, you do get all these different perspectives, and you get these different, like, he's really generous with how he depicts racism from all over the place, and sectarianism. And he has that section where each group gets a person who gets to stand up and to Brian's point, very theatrically, very much like a play, gets to stand up and like do a direct camera address of like their racist perspective about one of the other groups. And even like, it's like he doesn't pull punches on anyone, which is cool, because like Radio Raheem is like the big guy carrying the massive boombox, just blasting "Fight the Power," and he's basically like this symbol of like black energy and strength. Like if you're going symbolic, right? If this is like a Greek tragedy, which I kind of think it is, he's kind of this emblem of black power and strength and pride and stuff like that. But like Spike Lee doesn't let him be that like clean emblem. Like he goes into the Korean place and he's like, "English motherfucker," and he's like,
there's no caricatures. Like every character is like very well fleshed out.
He's a fucking jerk to them, and that whole scene in the Korean, and they really let it go too. Like he's in the Korean, he doesn't say a couple of things. He's like embarrassing him. They show the little kid, the Korean kid, like looking up from the counter at the beginning, so this little kid is watching this racism perpetuate, right? Like this is how racism gets taught, right? Like you learn it from when you're a kid. This guy comes in, he's big, he's a big black man, and he's belittling this kid's parents. Like Spike Lee doesn't pull any punches. He makes Radio Raheem the asshole in that scene. So he doesn't let anyone get a pass, including himself. Like Mookie, Spike Lee, the director, writer, producer, the actor, he's like a terrible father, like.
Oh, I was hoping someone would call that out, because I felt bad for even thinking about that. Like at the end, I was like, I don't think he has one line where he actually talks to his kid.
No.
And then when I was like reading like IMDb, like afterwards, like the kid has a name, but I don't think they ever say the kid's name.
Hector.
His
name is Hector.
He's just there.
No, his name is Hector. He's like, but he goes in to get ice cubes in the scene where he's gonna like put ice cubes all over his girlfriend slash, you know,
Yeah.
not wife, but like, you know, the mother of his child. And he like gets the ice cubes, and the grandmother is in there holding the baby. And she's like, "Oh, this fucking guy." She's speaking Spanish, and he's like, "Don't speak Spanish around my kid. I want my kid to." He's looking for ice cubes. He's like, "I want my kid to grow up learning English. Where are the ice cubes?"
Well, then where are you, Mookie?
Yeah, and
Well, then
she's like, "You're late. You're a bum. You're a terrible father." He's like, "Yeah." But
Yeah,
he is.
I thought that was an interesting aspect of his character for
He
sure.
doesn't let himself off the hook either. And then he's like, and that's where he says, "I don't want to hear about it. I don't want my son to learn Spanish. I want him to learn English." And then he's like, "It's bad enough his name is Hector." Yeah, he like walks into and he leaves, doesn't pick up the kid, doesn't even like pat him in the head, leaves to go in and rub ice on Rosie Perez's nipples.
her feature film debut.
On the topic of Rosie Perez, though, like no one had heard of this. He met her at a party, and
she was a dancer, like
dancing. Well, she wasn't at the party as a dancer. She was just at the party, and she was dancing to
okay,
the butt, doing the butt. That tune. Do you remember that tune?
No.
I'm not familiar with this tune.
Oh man, that's
hum a few bars for us, would you?
Doing the butt. Ow, sexy girl. Yeah. I can't believe you never heard that song. Anyway, she was dancing to that.
I mean, there's a reason I haven't seen this movie until now. The fact that I don't know that song is probably part of the tapestry of
I gotta
why
Google
I never
it.
saw this movie.
Don't make me Google stuff during a podcast. Oh man, I didn't even think it would come up. But yeah, the butt. It's from 1988. The song was written from the movie School Days. It's directed by Spike Lee, his second movie.
Spike Lee's second movie, yeah.
The song is written by Marcus Miller and performed by the DC-based go-go band EU. So yeah, it's EU. The European Union recorded this. But yeah, he saw her dancing up to the butt at a party and was like, "I gotta cast this lady. I gotta cast her in this play. She's great."
This was also Martin Lawrence's first role, and I didn't think he was that stellar in this. Like, he was just kind of there. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think he just kind of was a.
I never think Martin Lawrence is that stellar, so this doesn't really change much for me. He's a kid, and he's like, "Yeah, what the heck?"
Part kind of thing.
Being like catapulted into having his like own show.
Yeah, which I didn't think
and like start him in his own right. But
he's also a comedian. I mean,
he is. It's just kind of like
I guess I don't know what I was expecting, but when I had read that this was the debut of Rosie Perez and Martin Lawrence, I expected a larger role for Martin Lawrence. So when he was just on the street corner, and like 1 and 2 scenes,
I think
like
this was
pre-Martin
Lawrence
something.
fame.
Yeah, it was definitely pre-Martin Lawrence fame. I mean, but like, I going back to Rosie Perez, the opening of this goddamn movie where they're playing, Fight the Power by Public Enemy, and that fucking dance she's doing in the beginning of the fucking movie. I'm like, this opening sequence is more riveting than most movies I've seen anyway. Just like the way she's doing it, and they keep changing her outfits and the background and stuff, but like the way she's dancing, and apparently the dance took 8 hours. So her doing this for 8 friggin' hours in one shoot. And like, she's doing it with like this weird mix of like sexuality and like anger and like aggressiveness and like pride. It's super hard to explain, but like,
she's doing the Roger Rabbit with conviction.
Dude, there's so much going on in her dance and her face and everything. I was like, man, this is an outstanding opening to a movie. I cannot, it fires the first shot of this movie.
I actually it didn't land with me, like the opening dancing scene. Viewing it as like a sort of a long play, I guess it does kind of like set the tone and sort of like kind of put you in that mindset that you are watching this sort of character driven drama. But at the time, I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like it was like so we're just gonna this is like a music video. We're listening to the entire song and Rosie Perez just dancing solidly for 4.5, 5 minutes.
It's a different time too, but like like when the opening credits would, like if you watch old movies, they'll have the opening credits just roll and roll and roll, and you're like, wow, when's the movie starting? I mean, like I think like James Bond was one of the first movies where they would like have a scene, like a whole action scene to start the movie, and then they would do the credits, and then they would do more of the movie. But back then it was like roll the credits as long as you need to, and then we start the movie. But given that that was the convention of the time, like, damn, I think it's an incredibly powerful way to fucking do that. And having Fight the Power by Public Enemy play as much as they want, underneath it all. Like, that's the opening statement of the movie. It's like, damn, I think it's a really powerful way to start it.
What do you think, Brian, about the intro? Rosie Perez dancing.
It's fine. It goes on for a while. I mean,
it's fine.
I love Public Enemy, so I mean, the whole soundtrack is really just Fight the Power the whole time. But which made me think of a funny story. So this came out at 89. I was 9. So
yeah,
but I remember. So Public Enemy, Fear of the Black Planet was like the second album I ever bought.
Yeah.
So I always think this is really funny because this was like the height of late 80s, early 90s was it like the Tipper Gore parental advisory, like he was on her mission to so I remember this because I wanted this album really bad and my mom wouldn't let me get it. So I remember having my dad go inside and get it for me, care less. But I purposely remember getting the tape of this and it had, parental advisory on the explicit, on the outside of it. And
yeah.
I just remember when I was trying to think, I was like, what made me want to get this album at? And I re-listened to the album. I'm guessing it was probably 911's a joke. And I remember, Welcome to the Terror Dome and stuff like that. So I just thought that was funny. That's like the second album. It was a Public Enemy at 9 years old. So, but yeah, I mean, the opening is great. I mean, there's so many people outside of Rosie Perez that give fantastic performances that you don't like. We were going through this, earlier in the day, but the number of people who went on to have sort of, whether it was lengthy careers, but like Giancarlo Esposito in this, and then Sam Jackson and
bugging out.
Jackson. Pretty much everybody in this is like, John Turturro and Frankie Faison.
Frankie Faison, man. Yeah, he's just sitting on the corner. The guy from The Wire is just sitting on the corner, man.
The other thing I thought was funny, Frank Vincent's in it, who, drives the convertible and they spray him with the fire hydrant.
Oh, yeah.
That guy looks the same age from like the past 40 years. I know he's, but he was in The Sopranos. He's in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy looks exactly the same, no matter what decade he's in.
That's a good scene, man. I kind of love that scene where he's like,
with the fire hydrant.
It's a classic car. Fucking spray it, okay? And they're like, oh, we're not gonna spray. So it's gonna get sprayed. It's gonna fucking soak me. I'm fucking soaked. But like. That scene is also like a precursor to the explosive like ending scene, it's like, but it just keeps packing down like the pressure, the heat, the anger, the bias until it's got nowhere to go but out, and that's what it does. But there's so many friggin' people in this movie, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee are like the old married couple from stage and screen. They're great in it. Ossie Davis is the mayor. That's a classic friggin' performance.
Oh, that's such a great role.
Oh, so good.
Mayor.
The mayor, man.
Yeah, every character has a good shot, like a spotlight moment in the film, and it's interesting. He does a really good job of like Mookie delivering pizzas creates the thread that sort of allows you to run into the next group, and the next group talks to the next group because he keeps interacting with them all, whether it's like bugging out, walking by, or whatever, and the pizza joint is the centerpiece or the epicenter of like where everybody goes. Yeah. And it's just kind of interesting that he does a good job of kind of having almost literally everybody interact with everybody, which is kind of crazy. With such a large ensemble like that to, kind of have that many threads of a story going, but all kind of around the same theme, right? Like, which is kind of what, the heat and the oppression and everything like that. Everyone's just trying to escape the heat and everything. So it's kind of interesting. But I mean, one point I thought was kind of, so looking at it from Sal's perspective, right? The pizza owner who's been there for whatever decades, and Sal's racism is subdued in that, like, you think he's a nice guy, but he's only a nice guy in that when they know their place and he is above them, and he's, they're nice like Mookie is, and they're friendly and they're respectful, but then the later, as they start getting bolder, or in the sense like creating their own voice and like, bugging out and that kind of stuff, he's like, that's where it's, oh, things are changing, and they're, once they find a voice and they start pushing back a little, that's when he's, the real emotion comes out, as opposed to like, oh, it's like where, you guys are fine, and as soon as they stop following the rules, then he's like, then the real shit comes out of him.
Well, yeah,
where,
like, to your point, like, bugging out comes in and sits down. He's like, "Hey, Sal, how come there are no black people on the wall? I want black people on the wall." And like that, for that, he comes out with a baseball bat to like.
He probably doesn't think he's racist,
Right.
because I
Totally.
I hire Mookie and I'm nice and I feed all these people and blah blah blah. But it's like the complete ignorance of what, I'm a staple of this community and they grew up with my food, blah blah blah. But in truly he is, and it's like he's just ignorant to the fact, and it's completely there. But
yeah,
he just would be like, no, it's not me.
And you
like,
can
no,
also
it definitely is.
You can also like some black people, you know what I mean? Like where Mookie has that scene with John Turturro where he's like, "Who's your favorite basketball player?" Michael Jordan. Who's your favorite? I forget who the second one is. But he's like, basically Prince,
some music or Prince.
Prince and Michael Jordan,
Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson. That's it. His favorite basketball, and he's like, yeah, but they're not N-words. They're just like, it's different. We're like, you can. And like, Sal has a thing for Jade,
Well, and that's the old standby, right? Like, you're not racist. Oh, I have black friends.
Yeah,
it's like, it's
I
the
run
same
a pizzeria
thing,
in a black neighborhood.
It's like, well,
the kid who delivers for me, he's like a son, but then he's always telling him off too. And
he doesn't pay him.
Lazy or a bum, and
that's a great scene too. Where at the end, well, I mean, we're jumping ahead, but where he's throwing the money at him, and Mookie's just like, no, I just want to get paid, and he's like going off on him, and it's like, I just want what I'm owed, and like, and he tries to throw extra at him, he doesn't take it. He's like, no,
he gives it back. Yeah. So let's talk about that scene that leads to that, right? Because we got to talk about the scene that leads to that. It's the radio, but it's also, I mean, the string of the most vile racial invectives that you can spew at a whole pizza shop full of black people while you're destroying the symbol of black pride in the neighborhood.
And then that's the natural reaction to doing that.
Yeah. And then like, and this happens again and again too. Like black people get the N-word screamed at them, and then they'll whack somebody for it, or worse, it'll escalate into some horrible thing of racial violence. But like, that is a defense for some black people in these situations. Like, the N-word is such a triggering word. It has such an incredibly violent feeling in a person that it's really hard to overlook.
Those are the two philosophies that are interwoven throughout. That you have Smiley, who's handing out the picture of Malcolm X, shaking hands with MLK. At the end of the movie, it's got a quote from both Malcolm X and MLK. And what is the right thing? Is it which one of those two tactics is the right thing? And I don't think the movie tries to actually answer that. I would think the fact that Spike Lee went on to do a biography of Malcolm X probably speaks more to which one he liked a little bit more than the other. But I love that aspect of the movie, that you have these two pillars of American history that are sort of like sitting over your shoulder the whole time. Like, which one are you going to do? Which one are you going to do? How are you going to handle this situation?
Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately,
Yeah.
on a really fucking hot day, uh,
It's yeah. So
what did you think was going to happen?
they set it up, and too, like, I also, why I said I think this is like a Greek tragedy is because racism is a Greek tragedy, basically. Like, you can't avoid it. It's going to happen. Like, there's these clashes between people that are based on race and class and proximity and jealousy and all these other things mixed in. And then, like, honestly, if you put economic desperation into any neighborhood in the world, there's going to be strife and violence. There just is, because people need to survive. If people are just on a, like, I need to survive level, things are not going to be great. And so the inevitability of Greek tragedy, like, and that moment where Radio Raheem gets his boombox busted and everything goes to hell, and and Radio Raheem ends up getting killed by the police, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It starts with Sal being like, "We had a great day," and Mookie, you're like a son to me, and this is a family business, and these 4 kids knock on the door when they're closed. And Mookie is like, "We're closed. Get the fuck out." And Sal is like, "You know what? Let him in." And because they open the door for those 4 kids who are jerks about it too,
Yeah.
that lets Radio Raheem and
bugging
out in, and that causes everything. It's the catalyst for everything, but it was gonna happen. If it didn't happen then, it was gonna happen another time. So, like, it has this inevitability about it to me, like a Greek tragedy does. It's the thing that's fated to happen.
I didn't know. I mean, I definitely knew that it was going to like culminate in like a riot, and I knew that just as a piece of art in a film such as this, someone's got to die. But I honestly did not know who it would end up being. And in retrospect, I think it made it even like just so much more powerful. So that moment when there's scuffling in the streets and the cops finally they show up and they put him in the chokehold and kill Radio Raheem. I mean, that was such a powerful scene, and I think what really drove it home for me. And honestly, like I cried, like that moment when mother sister comes out when the fire hoses at the firefighters are firing the fire hoses at them, and she's screaming. It was just so powerful. But what's like really struck with me was going back to that scene where Radio Raheem's buying the batteries, and he's so on about the dates. How long are these batteries going to last? Fast forward, it doesn't matter how long the batteries are going to last because this was your last day. It's just like, it was just like so awful.
I didn't even think about that, man. I didn't even think about that. That's you just add another level for me, man.
Well, that, and to the point too, it's like it makes still to this day relevant. I mean, which is sad. I mean,
the George Floyd murder, all these people were like Radio Raheem, man. It's Radio. They killed Radio Raheem again.
One powerful thing I thought at the end that I thought was really, really good, or kind of a powerful scene, is where they go to turn on the Koreans, and the Korean guy is like, "We're the same. We're the same. We're both minority." It's kind of interesting, and they leave them alone. And they're like, "Listen, like at the end of the day, we're both oppressed. Like it's we're the same. We just look different, but we're going through the same shit." And however the white people treat them, some other people are treating them, and it's like, no, we're this. The racism's the same for us, and they just don't destroy their mart, even though they're upset that they've come in. But it's at the end of the day, it's like they're all kind of going through it in the same way.
And it has the Korean family have a realization in their desperation to save their livelihood and their store and everything. I think the guy kind of just blurts it out without thinking about it. I don't think he was like, "Oh, I'm going to say this and it's going to stop things."
I think he believed it. I mean,
he was just like, "Stop! We're the same. We're the same." And as he's saying it, like, this guy has racism about them too. He's like, "They're others. They're others." there are these assholes who come in and harass us about our English. I think in that moment, the Korean guy has this like epiphany without thinking about it. Like, we're the same. He didn't mean to say that. I don't think he just shouted it out and then was like, oh shit, we are the same. Like we are the same. And that's why I love that scene with the three. We haven't talked about these guys, but the three dudes on the corner, Frankie Faison and, they have
Yeah.
like ML and Sweet Dick Willie and Coconut Joe, I think is his name.
Coconut Sid.
Coconut Sid, that's it. But like they have that scene where they're talking about the Koreans. Yeah, and there's so many great scenes with those guys, and they're talking about the Koreans, and this guy's like,
I think one point he said you're 30 cents away from having a quarter, which is
30 cents away from having a
phrase.
quarter. He's like, when's your black ass gonna get a boat? He's like, that's the other thing they talk about all this. They talk about gentrification with the Larry Bird guy who buys a brownstone, like, and Spike Lee is a basketball fan and a Knicks fan, deliberately made it Larry Bird because he was like, I hate the Celtics.
Yeah.
So he made that guy have a Bird jersey.
That was a little on the nose.
Yeah.
But it worked. It worked well.
But it was also a joke because of how true it was that like, if you ever saw a white guy with any basketball gear, because a lot of people consider it like a black sport. Yeah, they got the Larry Bird jersey, like the only white dude back then that was like famous. But yeah, and then they have they're sitting around talking on the corner, and ML is like, I'm telling you, at some point the polar ice caps, they're all gonna melt, and the world's gonna be flooded. I'm like, this movie's like right about everything. Like, everything. It's one more little point.
Do you think Sam Jackson was in the same network as the DJ from the Warriors?
I thought about that. When it starts right up in his mouth. It starts right up focused on his mouth. I was like, it's the Warriors. It's the Warriors. It's Sam Jackson.
He probably knows that DJ.
He should have had a little call out, like, Mookie, come out and play.
All right. Do we need to rank this movie? Do we need to rate it at all?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we always do, right?
Okay. So would Do the Right Thing be a real traditional slice of New York pizza, or would it be a Hawaiian deep
pineapple, pineapple and ham deep dish?
How do you rank it on that scale?
I'm not going to go first. I think Brian should go first.
Fine. I'm not using the pizza scale. I mean,
never use my scales.
I thought we were doing no, because I go with that and they're like, no, we give it letters. I'm like, whatever. Well, this is a good pick in that where you get something you haven't seen and you actually are.
Yeah.
It's like recommending a book to a friend that they actually end up liking or whatever. I think it's a powerful film that people should see, or if they haven't seen it. And then, because I think the message is still timely, and it's also at the end of the day, it's just if you enjoy film, I think it's a really good example of a young director, writer, actor, like creating his own vision. Like I think it's just well done. I mean, from like an artistic perspective, I think it's just a very well like put together film, and that you would think they'd be sort of disjointed in a weird way for like an early filmmaker. Sometimes they're kind of like hits and misses here and there, but it's like a very thorough work. Like it's well done.
And when you're a black filmmaker, everybody says no to you, especially in 1988, 1986, 1987. Going back to the start of Spike Lee's career, I think She's Gotta Have It was maybe 86 or something. But like everybody said no to Spike Lee because everybody said no to any black person that wanted to tell a black story, especially if they wanted to write it and direct it. If you want to be in it, maybe you can be a buddy or another cop or a bad guy or a drug dealer. But everybody would say no to Spike Lee as a director, filmmaker. Oh, you want to tell a black story and you want to direct it? No, And so, he had to learn how to do everything, And when you look at the credits, it's like written, directed, produced, and starring Spike Lee. And it's not because he's an egomaniac, it's because he had all those years where he's like, well, fuck it. If I want to tell my story, I got to do it all myself. No one's going to give me a shot. And that's why by the time he made this for a third movie, it was so assured because he knew everything. He knew how to do everything because he had to, because nobody would let him do it in another movie.
So it sounds like you're leaning more towards New York Slice of Pizza than
New York Slice of Pizza
Pineapple.
all the way. Yeah, no, it's incredible, incredible damn movie. And it ages, unfortunately, terrifyingly well. It was right about so much stuff. And it was really pre-Rodney King, a glimpse for white America into the violence that's hidden in the black experience because the media doesn't talk about it. People don't write books about it. No one gets a Pulitzer Prize for writing about the deaths of black people in a poor neighborhood. And this movie shone a light on that stuff to white America. And, uh, you know, and still in 91, when the Rodney King, event occurred, it was caught on tape, white America was still shocked. So obviously they didn't really rush out and watch Do the Right Thing because white America was like, oh my God, the police did this. And everyone in black America and in poor black America anyway, was like, hell yes, they did. This is every friggin' day. I worked with a guy who did doing computer stuff, and he would hang out. He lived in the South Side. He's a really smart guy. Had a job at a law school, and every time in the summer, almost every day, the police would come and say, "Where's the drugs? Where's the guns?" They would arrest this guy because he had the same name as someone else who was in the arrest records. He just got harassed nonstop. So yeah, it's like it's a huge light that was shown out there for white America to see, and
Totally.
not that many people saw it. Not that many people took the opportunity to see it, which is a shame. But I give it an A plus, plus. I just think it's an incredible movie and horrifyingly relevant.
Yeah.
To this day. Yeah.
Give it a C minus. Not my cup of tea. Thanks anyway, Greg.
Shut up. Go talk in the weirding way.
No,
it's no Dune.
This should be it should be required viewing. I'll definitely have my oldest child when he gets a little bit older sit down and watch this with me. I think it's a really important film. I am shamed that I did not see it at any point in my young or adult life, and I don't know why. It just was never on my radar. And I've seen a couple Spike Lee movies, but I just don't know why I never saw this one. But present Joshua is not a fan of some of the choices that past Joshua made. So
if you had to trade watching that for another movie that you did watch when you were of age in 1989, what would you trade it for?
That's a tough one. Probably Crocodile Dundee 2. If I could get rid of Crocodile Dundee 2 and replace it with Do the Right Thing, I think that's a good trade. I think I'd come out ahead in that transaction.
Crocodile Dundee taught us so much about Australia. They carry around giant knives, and
King Ralph. I could probably do without King Ralph.
King Ralph.
It's taking up a little bit of space in my head. I don't know.
John Goodman as the royal king of England. It's what could go wrong there?
It's a laugh riot.
It has a lot to say about the monarchy, guys. Come on. Anyway, so Do the Right Thing. This was required viewing. If anyone out there has not seen it, I feel like you have to. It has not aged at all, unfortunately. It is incredibly relevant, incredibly poignant. It makes you think long and hard about what race relations were like in the 80s, 90s, aughts, all the way up to where they are now, and how pathetic it is that things have not changed for the better. And
Fucking seriously.
what kind of hand we all might sort of play in that on one level or another. But also just some of the with George Floyd and his murder and the countless other murders that have happened, and how this movie predicts it and handles that. It makes it all the sadder that this movie came out in 1989, and we just keep replaying the same thing over and over and over again. So as high a score as I can possibly give it. This is definitely up there for me as like an important favorite film that I'll come back to quite a bit in the future, I'm sure.
Nice. And I'm going to let you off the hook a little bit for not seeing it, because how do you see a movie, right? It has to be recommended to you.
Yeah.
And white America rejected this movie like in a huge amount.
I went to school in the Deep South, but I don't think it's an excuse to it. I went to a university, and I feel like I was involved in progressive politics from a very young age, and I still never saw this film. So yeah, I don't know what the excuse is, but it didn't happen. So
all right, I'll let you beat yourself up a little.
As I should.
Brian, what do you think, man?
My excuse is that I was 9 when it came out. So
VHS player when it got older.
Meanwhile, I still had Public Enemy though. My tape, but no, yeah, it's an A. I mean, it's a very powerful movie. I think, obviously the message, it's one of those films that it's justified for. I think it's weirdly enough, I think just is telling of the time. It wasn't even nominated, but Driving Miss Daisy won Best Picture that year, which is like the this should be the film that actually was nominated and won, but that's like, out of the Academy or whoever, Hollywood being like, oh, let's like this is a story, right? Like, what the fuck? that actually wins. So yeah, we'll give a Best supporting actor to the pizza guy. I mean, whatever.
So, yeah, I know.
But yeah, in terms of messaging, and like I look at it too, just more as, like I said, a piece of art. I think it's kind of, if you look at it in like not even in a time capsule, because you'd hope that it wouldn't be relevant today, but it ages, like, it doesn't feel dated at all. It seems like incredibly poignant still. Like, so it's one of those things where if you haven't seen it, you should. And I love films that are actually have a message to them and a point. And, as much as I love Top Gun Maverick, I mean, that to me is, a popcorn movie, where now a film is something to me where, the writer / director, filmmaker has a point, and he's trying to show you something that you might not otherwise see, and they want to shine light on something, like, as I think Greg put it really well, but it's something that makes it something that's worth seeing and that people should actually take a look at. And I feel like, to your point, I feel bad for not seeing it, but I mean, in the sense where, like you said, I think it's sort of just the age gap thing, and you just never, like, sometimes time passes and you weren't old enough, and I just never thought to go back. But I did, now that I've seen it, it makes me, my first thought was, after watching, was like, I want to watch the 2 films that before this. Like, because I always hear that someone's Spike Lee being a good filmmaker, but then I only knew him for a lot of his later stuff. I mean, so not where the early stuff where people, he sort of garnered his name from. So, it's an A, and if you haven't seen it, you go download it illegally. Fight the power.
Fight the power. No, give him some money. Give the man some money. Yeah, I think to the Driving Miss Daisy point, I think the original production company that financed this movie, I think it was like Columbia or something. they wanted to have an ending where he hugs Sal and they hug each other and cry or something over like their shared loss.
Get the fuck out of
And
here.
Spike Lee was like, and to his credit, the movie was done. The movie was basically done when they asked for this ending. So he put all this work into it, all this effort, all these people. And to his credit, Spike Lee was like, fuck no, I'm not doing that Hollywood ending. He basically like said this to the studio.
It was like, did
And
you
they
not see the
dropped
movie
him.
that we just watched?
Yeah,
Was
the whole
it-
ending
And
would be
they-
horrible.
And they dropped him. And to their credit, the head of Universal Pictures picked it right up and brought it out there and said, like, you don't have to change anything. You don't have to bullshit the press. You can say whatever the hell you want. I'm going to give this wide distribution. I'm going to give you what this, I give this movie and you what you deserve.
Because it's objectively just a fantastic piece of art.
just
It's amazing.
Friggin' great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
great.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in this movie. I think you could talk about it for a while. In terms of,
And we
I
have,
feel like
for
there's a lot of
sure.
stuff we haven't even touched on.
I know.
from
I know.
different
I should
characters
have
and
said
stuff, but
that.
it's like you can't go on
we
and
could-
on about it. But
We can two-part it like Dune. You get part 1 and then part 2.
Do the right thing too.
Do the right thing. The sequel that no one asked for.
Doing the right thing. All right. So,
oh no,
No.
doing the right thing.
all right. So we're gonna be mixing it up a little bit here on Rabbit Fighters. Up until now, we've been sort of randomizing our choices for the following episode, but we've, the brain trust has gotten together, and we've sort of figured that the pacing of some of the episodes back to back may be a little off, and so we're gonna change it up again. And instead of doing a random every episode, we're going to have one of us choose one from our list, and we'll do a rotation, and then every fourth will be random to throw a little mystery into there. So you'll get 3 in a row that were chosen by a human being, and then a fourth rando. So up first on this list, Greg has volunteered to choose one that he would like us to watch, and we are going to obey even if we don't want to.
Like us to watch.
Here's-
AKA
so
force
Greg,
us to
with
watch.
that,
Here's
what
where
is next
we
week's
get
pick?
Here's where we get to diverge from the cultural touchstone as well, where we're dropping the randomizer and the cultural touchstones things on this one, and I'm going to ruin all the good credentials I've gotten from recommending Do the Right Thing by recommending The Incredible Mr. Limpet, the 1960s Don Knotts film about a man who wants to be a talking fish, and he gets his wish, and plus Nazis.
Oh man,
Really?
This is
That's
Nazis.
the plot?
I mean, we're going
That's the
from the
plot.
very, very high Spike Lee Do the Right Thing right into
Wait, Don Knotts made feature films?
Don Knotts made endless Disney movies.
Really?
I don't think this
wow.
is
yeah, man,
You've never
I
seen?
only knew him from
Apple
the...
Dumpling Gang.
Have you never seen The
Oh.
Ghost and Mr. Chicken?
No.
That's
That's also a real movie.
The Andy Griffith Show. That's all I know him from.
That's
All right,
also
so-
a real movie starring Don Knotts, The Ghost of Mr. Chicken. We lived in a small town, and in the summer they would play cheap movies in the downtown, like
Wait.
movie center, and when they would play endless old Don Knotts movies and Disney movies. So I've seen all these shitty movies.
Why are you having us watch this?
I think we need to save that for after we actually watch it, and we'll discuss
Fine.
Because I
why-
loved it as
why
a
we
kid.
watched it.
It's
Okay.
I loved
Alright,
it as
that's
a
all-
kid
We'll,
in a
we'll
simple
unpack
small
this
town.
in therapy next week. So.
Yeah.
The Incredible Mr.
Like,
Limpet.
why are you doing this to me? Why?
All right, well, you can explain yourself next week.
I'll explain myself later. Yeah,
All right, that's the truth, Ruth.
it's the truth. That's a triple truth.
What
Ruth.
is he? What does he said instead of a?
He says you need to
forehead,
cool
you
that shit out, and that's the double truth, Ruth.
No, but he's like, you got a forehead, you got an 8 head.
Oh.
That's just Mookie. Yeah, Mookie's like, I got a forehead. You got an 8 head. You got like a Chardonnay forehead.